Picture this. You're 63 years old, standing in your kitchen at 11 at night, staring into the fridge, wondering if that midnight snack is quietly sabotaging your brain or, surprisingly, saving it. And here's the twist almost nobody talks about. What you eat in the last hour before sleep might matter more for your memory than anything you eat all day long. Because while you're dreaming, your brain isn't resting at all. It's working overtime, flushing out toxic proteins linked to cognitive decline, sorting the day's memories into long-term storage, and repairing neural pathways that keep you sharp. And neurologists have spent the last decade studying exactly what fuels that overnight cleanup crew, discovering that certain foods eaten before bed can dramatically support this process while the wrong ones can quietly undermine it. And today we're diving deep into 5 of these brain-boosting foods that top neurologists are now recommending specifically for people over 60, because after 6 decades of life, the brain starts facing new challenges. Blood flow slows down, inflammation creeps up, and the protective barrier around your brain becomes a little less forgiving of poor nutrition, which means what worked for you at 30 doesn't necessarily work now. And that's exactly why this list matters, because it's not about generic health eating advice, it's about precision nutrition timed to when your brain does its most important overnight repair work. So let's start with the first food on this list, one that might already be sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now. Tart cherries, specifically in the form of tart cherry juice or whole tart cherries. And here's why neurologists are excited about them. Tart cherries are one of the only natural food sources of melatonin, the hormone that regulates your sleep cycle. But what makes them special for memory isn't just the sleep connection. It's that quality deep sleep is when your brain performs a process called glymphatic clearance, essentially a nightly power wash that removes beta amyloid, the same sticky protein buildup associated with memory decline and Alzheimer's disease. And researchers at the University of Pennsylvania found that older adults who drank tart cherry juice before bed didn't just fall asleep faster, they experienced measurably improved sleep quality and stayed asleep longer, which gave their brains more uninterrupted time to complete this crucial cleansing cycle. And on top of that, tart cherries are loaded with anthocyanins, powerful antioxidant compounds that cross the blood-brain barrier and directly combat oxidative stress, one of the primary drivers of age-related cognitive decline. So a small glass of tart cherry juice or a handful of tart cherries about an hour before bed doesn't just help you drift off. It actively supports the biological machinery your brain uses to protect itself while you sleep. And that's just the beginning, because the second food on this list works through a completely different mechanism, one that's been quietly gaining attention in neurology circles for its surprising connection to memory formation, and that food is walnuts. And before you dismiss this as something you've heard 100 times before, stick with me, because the reason walnuts matter before bed specifically is fascinating. Walnuts are unusually rich in an omega-3 fatty acid called alpha-linolenic acid, and unlike fish oil, which delivers omega-3s in a different form, this particular type has been shown in multiple studies to support the structural integrity of brain cell membranes. And here's the part that surprises people. Your brain is roughly 60% fat, and the health of those fatty membranes directly affects how efficiently neurons communicate with each other, which is essentially the biological definition of memory and cognitive speed. And because cell repair and synaptic strengthening happen predominantly during deep sleep stages, giving your body these building blocks right before bed means they're available exactly when your brain needs them most for overnight reconstruction. And there's more. Walnuts also contain a modest amount of natural melatonin in themselves, along with magnesium, a mineral that plays a critical role in calming the nervous system and has been linked in several studies to improved sleep architecture in adults over 60, and magnesium deficiency, which becomes increasingly common as we age due to changes in absorption, has actually been associated with increased anxiety and even impaired memory consolidation. So by eating a small handful of walnuts, just a handful, not a whole bowl, before bed, you're essentially giving your brain a 2-for-1 advantage raw material for cellular repair and a natural mineral assist toward deeper, more restorative sleep. And what's remarkable is that a study published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging found that older adults who regularly consumed walnuts scored significantly better on cognitive function tests compared to those who didn't. Even after adjusting for other dietary and lifestyle factors, and while no single food is a magic fix, the compounding effect of consistently feeding your brain these specific nutrients at the right time, night after night, is where neurologists say the real long-term benefit lies. And that brings us to the halfway point of our list. Because we've only just scratched the surface, there are still 3 more foods to cover, each working through a completely different pathway to protect and strengthen your memory as you sleep. And one of them might be the most surprising food on this entire list, something you'd never expect a brain doctor to recommend eating right before climbing into bed. So if you're finding this useful so far, stay with us, because what comes next connects directly to a discovery neurologists only confirmed within the last few years about the relationship between gut health and memory, and it's going to change the way you think about your evening snack forever. So let's talk about that gut-brain connection, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. And the third food on our list is Greek yogurt, specifically the plain, unsweetened kind, and I know what you might be thinking. Yogurt before bed sounds almost too simple to matter, but neurologists have become increasingly focused on something called the gut-brain axis, which is essentially a direct communication highway between the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system and your central nervous system. And here's what's remarkable: roughly 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter closely tied to mood and increasingly linked to memory consolidation during sleep, is actually produced in your gut, not your brain, which means the health of your gut microbiome has a far more direct impact on your cognitive function than most people ever realize. And Greek yogurt is packed with live probiotic cultures that help maintain a healthy balance of gut bacteria, and a landmark study published in the journal Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience found that older adults with more diverse gut microbiomes performed significantly better on memory and cognitive assessments compared to those with less diverse gut bacteria. And the researchers specifically pointed to fermented dairy products like yogurt as one of the most accessible ways to support this diversity. And there's an added bonus for nighttime consumption specifically. Greek yogurt is naturally high in tryptophan, the same amino acid famously associated with that sleepy feeling after Thanksgiving dinner, and tryptophan is a direct precursor to both serotonin and melatonin, meaning eating a small serving of plain Greek yogurt before bed doesn't just feed beneficial gut bacteria. It also provides your body with the raw material it needs to naturally wind down and transition into deeper sleep stages. And deeper sleep, as we've already discussed, is precisely when your brain performs its most critical memory-related maintenance work. And for anyone over 60 specifically, this matters even more because gut bacterial diversity naturally declines with age, partly due to changes in diet, medication use, and digestive efficiency, which means actively supporting your gut through simple food choices becomes increasingly important rather than optional. And neurologists now generally recommend pairing a small bowl of plain Greek yogurt with a few berries for added antioxidants. But the key word here is plain, because sugary flavored yogurts can actually work against you by feeding harmful bacteria, strains, and spiking blood sugar right before sleep. Which brings us to the fourth food on this list, and this one might be the most surprising recommendation yet. Something you'd rarely expect to hear associated with brain health, and that food is a small square of dark chocolate, specifically dark chocolate with at least 70% cocoa content. And before you get too excited and reach for a candy bar, let's be clear, this is about a small, controlled amount, roughly 1 to 2 squares, not an entire bar. But here's why neurologists are increasingly comfortable recommending this as an evening brain food. Dark chocolate is remarkably rich in flavonoids, plant compounds with powerful antioxidant and inflammatory properties, and a study conducted by researchers at Columbia University found that flavonoid-rich diets were associated with improved memory performance in older adults, with some participants showing memory function equivalent to people 2 to 3 decades younger, and the mechanism behind this is fascinating. Flavonoids appear to increase blood flow to a region of the brain called the dentate gyrus, a small structure within the hippocampus that plays a crucial role in forming new memories, and improved blood flow to this specific region means more oxygen and nutrients reaching the exact area responsible for converting short-term experiences into long-term memories, and because this process continues and often intensifies during sleep, having a small amount of dark chocolate in the evening may help support this blood flow exactly when it's needed most. And there's an additional benefit specific to nighttime consumption. Dark chocolate contains modest amounts of magnesium, similar to walnuts, which, as we discussed earlier, supports nervous system relaxation and healthier sleep patterns. And unlike milk chocolate or sugary desserts, dark chocolate with high cocoa content has a relatively low glycemic impact, meaning it won't cause the blood sugar spike and subsequent crash that can disrupt sleep quality and over time contribute to insulin resistance, a condition increasingly linked in research to accelerated cognitive decline and even sometimes referred to by some researchers as type 3 diabetes because of its direct connection to brain function. And this is precisely why moderation and quality matter so much here. A small square of high cocoa dark chocolate before bed can be a legitimate act of brain health, while a large amount of sugary chocolate could quietly work against everything else on this list. And it's this kind of nuance, this precision, that separates generic health advice from what neurologists are actually recommending based on current research. And we're not finished yet, because there's one final food on this list, and it might be the most important one of all, not because it's exotic or hard to find, but because of a specific compound it contains that directly targets the exact type of memory decline most common after age 60, and understanding why this last food works the way it does might completely change what's sitting on your nightstand and tonight, so let's get into it. So here we are at the fifth and final food on this list, and neurologists consider this one something of a quiet powerhouse because it doesn't get nearly the attention it deserves, and that food is kiwifruit. Yes, the small fuzzy green fruit you probably haven't thought about since childhood, but stay with me, because the research behind kiwifruit and sleep-related memory support is genuinely compelling, and it starts with a study published in the Asia-Pacific Journal of Clinical Nutrition, where researchers had participants eat 2 kiwifruits about an hour before bed every night for a month, and the results were striking. Participants fell asleep roughly 40% faster. Their total sleep time increased by about 13%, and perhaps most importantly for our purposes, their sleep efficiency, meaning the percentage of time actually spent in restorative sleep versus tossing and turning, improved significantly, and here's why this matters so much for memory. Specifically, kiwifruit is unusually rich in both serotonin and antioxidants, particularly vitamin C, and unlike most fruits, it delivers this serotonin in a bioavailable form that appears to directly support the body's natural transition into deeper sleep stages, and remember, serotonin is the direct precursor to melatonin, so eating kiwifruit before bed essentially gives your body a natural food-based nudge toward the exact hormonal shift needed for deep, restorative sleep. And beyond the sleep benefits, kiwifruit contains a unique combination of antioxidants and folate that researchers have specifically linked to protection against oxidative stress in brain tissue. And oxidative stress, as we touched on earlier with tart cherries, is one of the primary biological mechanisms behind age-related memory decline, essentially a slow accumulation of cellular damage that, over decades, adds up and affects how efficiently your neurons function. And what makes Kiwifruit, particularly valuable for people over 60, is that it delivers this antioxidant protection alongside natural fiber and a low glycemic index, meaning it supports healthy blood sugar levels overnight, and stable blood sugar throughout the night turns out to be surprisingly important for memory, because blood sugar crashes during sleep can actually trigger microarousals, brief moments where your brain partially wakes up without you even realizing it, and these microarousals fragment your sleep architecture, reducing the amount of time you spend in the deep and REM sleep stages, where memory consolidation primarily happens. So by choosing a low glycemic, serotonin-rich food like kiwifruit as your evening snack, you're essentially protecting the structural integrity of your sleep itself, which protects everything else we've talked about throughout this video. And when you step back and look at these 5 foods together, tart cherries, walnuts, plain Greek yogurt, dark chocolate, and kiwifruit, you start to notice they're not just 5 random recommendations. They represent 5 different biological pathways that all converge on the same goal, supporting your brain's ability to clean itself, repair itself, and consolidate memories while you sleep. Tart cherries and kiwifruit both boost natural melatonin and serotonin in production to improve sleep quality itself. Walnuts provide the structural building blocks your brain cells need for overnight repair. Greek yogurt supports the gut bacteria that produce the neurotransmitters your brain depends on, and dark chocolate improves blood flow to the exact brain region responsible for forming new memories. And this is really the core insight that neurologists want people over 60 to understand. Memory decline isn't usually one single problem with one single fix. It's the cumulative result of several small, related processes slowly becoming less efficient over time: reduced blood flow, increased inflammation, disrupted sleep, declining gut health, and oxidative stress. And the encouraging part, the part that should genuinely give you hope, is that every single one of these processes can be supported, protected, and in many cases improved through consistent, intentional food choices. And none of these 5 foods require a prescription, a specialist, or a complicated regimen. They're accessible, affordable, and something you can start incorporating into your evening routine as soon as tonight. And of course, it's worth saying clearly, no food replaces medical care, and if you're experiencing significant memory changes, that's always worth discussing with your doctor. But as a foundation, as a nightly habit that compounds over months and years, these 5 foods represent exactly what current neurological research points to as meaningful evidence-based support for a sharper, more resilient memory as you age. So tonight, instead of reaching for whatever's easiest, consider reaching for one of these 5 instead. Your brain does some of its most important work while you're asleep, and giving it the right raw materials right before that work begins might be one of the simplest, most powerful habits you can build for your long-term cognitive health. And if this video helped you see food in a new light, share it with someone in your life who could use this information, because a healthier memory tomorrow often starts with a smarter choice tonight.